A customer walks into a nail salon, spends $60, and walks out an hour later with a fresh manicure and pedicure. At first glance, this looks like an incredible business. The products seem cheap, the equipment isn't exactly industrial machinery, there is no warehouse full of inventory, and unlike a restaurant, nobody is cooking expensive food that can spoil overnight. So here's the obvious question. If a nail salon can charge $50, $70, or even more for an appointment that uses only a relatively small amount of physical product, why doesn't every nail salon owner make a fortune? Because the polish isn't the business. The real business is selling time, space, labor, and repeat appointments. And once you follow that money, the economics of a nail salon become much more interesting. The United States has more than 200,000 people working as manicurists and pedicurists, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the occupation is projected to grow faster than employment overall. The BLS also describes nail care as a relatively low-cost luxury service, which helps explain why customers can keep spending on it, even when they become more careful with larger purchases. But owning a nail salon is very different from being a nail technician. A technician sells their time. An owner has to make money from an entire system. And that system starts with one deceptively simple transaction. A customer books an appointment. Let's say the average ticket is $50. That $55 comes into the salon. But the owner doesn't get to keep $55. First, someone has to perform the service. Then there are supplies. Then rent. Then utilities. Then insurance. Then booking software and credit card fees. Then cleaning and sanitation. Then marketing. Then taxes. And depending on the business model, the technician may receive a commission, hourly wage, booth payment, or some combination of compensation. So the money flow is really, customer pays $55, the salon receives $55 in revenue. Then the business starts cutting that $55 apart, and this is where most people get the economics wrong. They look at the price of a manicure and compare it with the cost of a bottle of polish. But a salon doesn't sell bottles of polish, it sells technician time. Imagine a technician can perform one $55 service every hour. In an 8-hour day, that sounds like $440 of potential revenue. 5 technicians could theoretically produce 2,226 operating days later. That theoretical number could approach $57,000. Sounds fantastic. Except there's a huge problem. Those technicians aren't automatically busy for 8 hours. There are cancellations, late customers, empty appointment slots, slow weekdays, breaks, cleaning, setup, services that take longer than expected, and customers who choose a $30 service instead of a $90 one. That means the most important asset inside the salon isn't the chairs, it's utilization. How much of the available technician time is actually being sold? A chair sitting empty doesn't look expensive, but economically it can be. If a technician has a 2-hour gap in the middle of the day, the salon has lost 2 hours of potential revenue that can never be recovered. You can't inventory an empty Tuesday afternoon and sell it on Friday. That is why the best nail salons obsess over appointments, rebooking, scheduling, and customer retention. Because the business is fundamentally a capacity business. You have a limited number of technicians. Each technician has a limited number of working hours. Each appointment consumes part of that capacity. And the owner's job is to turn as much of that capacity as possible into revenue. Now let's talk about what it actually costs to get into the business. There isn't one universal number, because opening a small nail suite is completely different from opening a large full-service salon. Recent industry startup estimates put small and mid-sized nail salon launches anywhere from roughly tens of thousands of dollars to well over $100,000, with higher-end salons potentially requiring several $100,000. These are estimates rather than government benchmarks, and the biggest variable is usually the location and build-out. And that build-out can be where the money disappears surprisingly quickly. You need manicure stations, pedicure chairs, plumbing, electrical work, lighting, ventilation, furniture, signage, point-of-sale systems, security, sanitation equipment, decor, initial inventory, insurance, licensing, and enough cash to survive the first few months before the customer base becomes stable. A salon can look small from the sidewalk and still require a serious amount of capital behind the scenes. Suppose, purely as an illustrative example, an entrepreneur spends $100,000 opening a 6-station salon. Maybe $30,000 goes into the build-out, $20,000 into equipment and furniture, $8,000 into products and initial inventory, $5,000 into licensing, insurance, technology, and setup, and the remaining $37,000 becomes working capital and miscellaneous startup costs. Those numbers aren't a prediction of what your salon will cost. They're simply a way to see the economics. Because the biggest mistake a new owner can make is spending the entire $100,000 getting the doors open and leaving almost nothing in the bank. A beautiful salon with no cash reserve can still fail. Why? Because revenue doesn't arrive perfectly on schedule. Rent does, payroll does, utility bills do, loan payments do, suppliers do. The salon may need months to build a repeat customer base. So working capital isn't just money sitting around, it's what gives the business time to become a business. And now we get to the most important question: where does the revenue actually come from? The obvious answer is manicures and pedicures. And those are absolutely central. But modern nail salons can have multiple layers of revenue. A basic manicure, a gel manicure, a pedicure, gel extensions, acrylics, nail art, French tips, upgrades, add-ons, waxing, retail products, gift cards, and in some businesses, additional beauty services. The interesting part is that these services don't have the same economics. A $30 service and a $75 service may occupy a similar amount of calendar time, but they can produce dramatically different revenue per hour. That means the owner isn't simply asking, how many customers did we serve? The better question is, how much revenue did we generate from each hour of productive capacity? That's a completely different way of looking at the business. Imagine two customers. Customer A spends $35 on a basic service that takes 45 minutes. Customer B spends $75 on a premium service that takes 60 minutes. Customer B isn't just spending more money. The salon is generating more revenue per technician hour. That's why upgrades and premium services can matter so much. A few dollars of additional product may allow the salon to charge substantially more. And that is one of the hidden economics of the industry. The customer isn't necessarily paying for the extra polish. They're paying for the experience, skill, time, customization, and perceived result. This is why a salon can have surprisingly high gross margins on services. BizBuySell's historical data for nail salon businesses showed average gross margins above 76% in 2020 and 2021. But gross margin is not the same thing as money the owner takes home. Operating expenses still have to be paid afterward. And that distinction is incredibly important, because a salon might sell $500,000 worth of services. That sounds like a $500,000 business, but $500,000 in revenue is not $500,000 in profit. Not even close. If technicians receive a large share of service revenue, labor becomes one of the biggest expenses. And labor economics can vary dramatically depending on whether the salon uses employees, commissioned technicians, booth renters, independent contractors, or some hybrid model. The owner is essentially choosing how the economic relationship works. In one model, the salon controls the customer experience, collects the money, and pays technicians. In another, technicians may pay the owner rent for their station and keep more of the service revenue themselves. That changes the risk. Under a booth rental model, the owner may have more predictable rental income and less direct payroll exposure. But the owner may also have less control over pricing, scheduling, service standards, and customer relationships. Under an employee or commission model, the salon can potentially capture more of the customer relationship and coordinate the operation more tightly. But now the owner carries more operating responsibility, and this is where owning a nail salon becomes less about nails and more about business design. If you're enjoying these breakdowns and want to understand how ordinary businesses actually make their money, subscribe to Money Behind, because once you start following the money, businesses that look simple from the outside become surprisingly complicated underneath. Now let's build a hypothetical salon. Say 6 technicians are producing an average of $350 per working day in service revenue. If each works about 24 days per month, that's $350 times 24 sales, $8,400 per technician. Multiply that by 6. That's about $50,400 in monthly service revenue. Again, this is a hypothetical model, not an industry average. Now imagine the salon adds retail products and small upgrades that generate another $3,000. Total monthly revenue becomes roughly $53,400. Now the money starts flowing out. Suppose labor and technician compensation consume 45%. That's about 24 through 30. Supplies might consume another 8%. That's about 4,272. Now we're down to roughly 25,098 hours before fixed overhead. Then comes rent. Let's say the location costs $7,000 per month. Insurance, software, utilities, cleaning, marketing, maintenance, payment processing, and miscellaneous overhead could consume another $6,000. Now the hypothetical operating profit is only around $12,000 before taxes, debt costs, and owner-specific expenses. That means the salon generated more than $53,000 in monthly revenue. But the amount available as operating profit is a fraction of that. And this is exactly why revenue can be misleading. A business can look incredibly busy and still be financially mediocre. Now imagine the salon loses 15% of its appointments. Revenue doesn't necessarily fall by exactly 15% in every real-world situation. But let's simplify the example and assume it does. That $53,400 becomes about $45,400. But rent didn't fall 15%, insurance didn't fall 15%, software didn't fall 15%. Your lease certainly didn't call you and say, "Business is slow this month, so don't worry about paying me." This is the danger of fixed costs. When revenue falls, some expenses move with it. Others don't. That creates operating leverage. And operating leverage can make a good salon extremely profitable when demand is strong. It can also make a weak salon lose money surprisingly fast. Now let's talk about break-even. Suppose a salon has $13,000 of monthly fixed costs. And after technician compensation, supplies, payment fees, and other variable expenses, the business keeps roughly 45 cents from each dollar of service revenue to cover those fixed costs and eventually generate profit. To cover $13,000, the salon needs approximately $13,000. 0.45. That's about $28,900 in monthly revenue. So if the average customer spends $60, the salon needs roughly 482 customer transactions per month just to cover that simplified contribution requirement. Over 24 operating days, that's about 20 appointments per day. Across 6 technicians, that's only around 3.3 appointments per technician per day. That sounds manageable, but here's the catch. The average ticket might not be $60. The salon might have slower days, some services may take much longer, and the owner still has to pay themselves if they are working in the business. So break-even isn't one magic number, it's a moving target. Now imagine 3 different years. In the bad year, customers become more price-sensitive. A competitor opens nearby. Appointment volume falls. The salon starts discounting. Revenue falls from $53,000 a month to $42,000. The owner may still have most of the same fixed costs. Profit could disappear. In the normal year, the salon maintains its customer base. Technicians stay productive. Average ticket rises gradually through premium services. Revenue remains around $50,000 to $55,000 per month. The owner generates a reasonable operating profit. In the great year, the salon has strong retention. Technicians are booked consistently. Premium services become popular. Retail sales grow. A second location becomes possible. Revenue might climb significantly without requiring the owner to double the physical footprint. And that last part is important, because there is another economic concept hiding inside the salon: revenue density. How much money can you generate from the space you already pay for? If you have a 1 to 500 square foot salon and you're paying thousands of dollars every month for it, every empty station represents unused capacity. That's why adding customers can be powerful. The rent doesn't necessarily increase when a technician performs one more appointment. The building is already there. The lights are already on. The booking software already exists. So additional revenue can become increasingly attractive once the fixed infrastructure is covered, but only up to a point. Because the salon eventually hits another constraint: people. You can't squeeze infinite appointments into a technician's day. And hiring more technicians creates new costs and new management problems. That means the owner eventually has to choose between 2 strategies: increase revenue per customer, or increase the number of productive technicians? And sometimes the smartest answer is neither. It may be improving retention, because a repeat customer can be dramatically more valuable than constantly finding new customers. Think about it. Suppose a customer spends $60 every 4 weeks. That's roughly 13 visits per year. At $60 per visit, that's about $780 in annual revenue from one customer. Now multiply that by 500 loyal customers. That's potentially $390,000 of annual customer spending before accounting for cancellations, price changes, and other realities. Suddenly, customer retention becomes an asset. The salon isn't just selling today's manicure, it's trying to create the next appointment. And the appointment after that. This is why a nail salon can behave like a recurring revenue business, even though customers aren't necessarily paying subscriptions. The recurring behavior comes from the customer. If people return every few weeks, the salon doesn't have to start from zero every month. That's incredibly valuable, but there is another side to this. The technician often owns part of the customer relationship. A great nail technician can build a personal following. Customers may walk into a salon because of the technician, not because of the sign outside. That creates one of the industry's biggest risks: talent concentration. If your best technician leaves and takes a large percentage of their clients with them, the salon can lose revenue without losing a single chair. This is why a smart owner has to build a brand that is bigger than one employee. Consistent service, strong customer records, easy booking. Multiple technicians, customers' trust, good reviews, a recognizable location, and a customer experience that makes the salon itself part of the reason people return. Because otherwise, the owner may think they own a business when they actually own a collection of rented chairs and relationships they don't control. And now we get to the biggest hidden cost: the owner's time. This is one of the easiest numbers to ignore. Suppose the salon produces $100,000 of accounting profit. That sounds great. But what if the owner is working 60 hours a week managing employees, answering customer complaints, ordering supplies, covering shifts, handling payroll, doing marketing, and solving problems? Is that really the same business as one producing $100,000 while the owner spends 10 hours a week overseeing a manager? No. The first business may be buying the owner's job, the second is becoming an asset. And that distinction matters enormously if the owner ever wants to sell. A business that depends entirely on the owner can be difficult to scale. A business with systems, repeat customers, trained staff, clean financial records, and predictable cash flow is much more valuable. So the real goal isn't simply, how do I open a nail salon? The better question is, how do I build a nail salon that works without me standing behind the front desk every day? That's the difference between self-employment and business ownership. Now consider debt. If that hypothetical entrepreneur borrowed $60,000 to help fund a $100,000 launch, the salon suddenly has another monthly obligation. The loan doesn't care whether Tuesday was slow. It doesn't care whether 3 technicians called in sick. It doesn't care whether a competitor opened across the street. The payment still arrives. Debt can be useful when the business has predictable cash flow and the borrowed money helps create productive capacity. But debt becomes dangerous when the business is using tomorrow's revenue to pay for yesterday's expansion. And salons have another problem. The initial investment isn't the end. Equipment wears out. Pedicure chairs break, ventilation systems need maintenance, furniture gets damaged, technology needs replacing. The interior eventually needs refreshing. So the owner has to reserve money for capital expenditures instead of treating every dollar of profit as spendable income. This is where the economics become surprisingly similar to much larger businesses. Cash flow matters. Not just revenue, not just profit. Cash. Because a salon can show an accounting profit while still experiencing a cash squeeze. And now we can finally answer the bigger question. Is owning a nail salon actually a good business? The answer is, it can be. But it's not automatically a high-margin cash machine. The strongest version of the model has several things working together: a good location, reliable technicians, high appointment utilization, strong repeat customers, a healthy average ticket, controlled labor costs, premium services that increase revenue per hour, reasonable rent, disciplined inventory, and enough working capital to survive slow periods. The weakest version has almost the opposite. High rent, low traffic, empty chairs, constant discounting, high employee turnover, poor retention, debt payments, and an owner who mistakes revenue for profit. The biggest misconception is probably this. People see a $60 manicure and think the business has almost no cost. But the expensive part isn't the polish. It's the human time required to deliver the service, the space required to deliver it, and the cost of keeping that space productive every hour the doors are open. That is the real economics. A nail salon is essentially a machine for converting technician hours into customer revenue. The owner makes money when that machine is busy enough, priced correctly enough, and efficiently managed enough to cover all the costs surrounding it. And that's why two salons sitting 3 blocks apart can have completely different financial outcomes. One can be packed every weekend and still struggle. The other can have fewer customers but higher average tickets, better retention, lower rent, and better technician productivity, and make substantially more money. So if you're thinking about owning one, don't start with the question, how much can I charge for a manicure? Start with, how many productive hours can I sell? How much revenue does each hour generate? How much of that revenue goes to labor? How much goes to rent? How many appointments do I need to break even? And what happens if my customer traffic falls by 20%? Those questions reveal the business, because the nail salon you see is just the surface. Underneath the polish, the pedicure chairs, the music, and the customers is a much simpler machine. Customers bring money in. Technicians convert time into services. Rent and overhead consume part of the revenue. Repeat customers create predictability. Premium services increase revenue per hour. And whatever remains after all of those costs is what the owner actually gets to keep. That's the money behind the nail salon. And once you understand that, you realize the most profitable thing in the room isn't the nail polish, it's the calendar. Because every empty hour is revenue that disappeared forever. And every fully booked hour is a small piece of the business finally working exactly as it was designed to. Would you actually invest in a nail salon, or do you think the risks are bigger than the opportunity? And what business should money behind follow the money through next?